Now I'm very excited to welcome back one of the most renowned college football sports bettors that I know, and Mr. Brad Powers from BradPowers7.com. You can follow Brad at BradPowers7. Brad, the smell of blood is in the air, my man, and I'm talking about blood of the sports books here. We got a lot of games to talk about. It's Halloween weekend, and you are back again. How you doing, bud?
Doing well. I like your consistency. Every year you have me on Halloween week, and I joke it's because I'm probably the scariest looking person that you have on a yearly basis. But I think it's the fourth year we've done this on Halloween.
Yeah, I think this is the fourth probably in a row, fourth or fifth, but it's consistent now. I have certain guys for certain things. I try to bring Chris back on for for Christmas, and it's a little bit different for March Madness, but I think it's fun, and we've had some success. So why break up a good thing? And I appreciate your time, of course, and you got that beautiful hat on. Really appreciate that, and we've got a lot to talk about because man, it's just crazy right now in the land of college football. It's fun though. A lot of people that complain about the play. I wasn't someone that complained about the playoffs getting bigger, but it's getting crazy because I think that we have a lot of undefeated teams still. I mean, do you? I didn't look back. I didn't look at the history, but back in week 10, going into week 10 here, have we had this many undefeated teams? What do you think about that?
I think it's pretty typical. Well, you know what? Now I'm thinking of it, there probably is a little bit more than usual. There's certainly a lot more one-loss teams than usual, and a lot of it has to do with these expanded conferences. Just because you're in a conference doesn't mean that you're not necessarily playing your team in the conference. And a lot of these schedules for this particular season have been backloaded tremendously, where nobody's played anybody for the first 4, 5, 6 weeks of the season. And now all of a sudden we're starting to play teams, and we're seeing some teams starting to get exposed that were a little overrated. But yeah, I would say if you combine the 0 loss and the 1 loss teams, it's definitely more than usual. And uh, we'll see what that ends up being. And I'm looking like come playoff time because you would think with expanded playoffs, they wouldn't have any issues. People not having major gripes, not getting left out because, I mean, are you kidding me? If you're the 13th best team in the country, how can you gripe? I mean, you probably don't deserve to play for the national title, but this might be a year where maybe that 13th, 14th, 15 teams are going to be, griping that they're not in the playoff.
Brad, with my experience with March Madness, even the 65th team likes to gripe when it comes into these situations, my man. It's never going to stop, but it's definitely a lot different now. It's like, dude, you shouldn't have lost those 1 or 2 games. That's how it is. If it was 4, you wouldn't have made it. And you're massive dog. So, I'm going to back that up as much as I can. I'm just happy that I have a playoff system in college football, especially with the directions it's been going. But that leads me into my next question, being Halloween and all. Give me a scary scenario for the college football playoffs that would scare the pants out of maybe the selection committee or everybody else in some conferences.
Well, I mean, you don't have to get too creative. You start looking down these teams' schedule, and I get it. There's going to be some upsets, but even if there are, there's still. I mean, Oregon's going to be, favored in their remaining games. They're very likely to go unbeaten. Georgia, I know they got a tough game at Ole Miss next week, but they're going to be favored in that one. So you got them. Penn State probably loses to Ohio State. We'll probably get to that game, but I wouldn't be stunned if they beat Ohio State, but it's likely they lose. But Miami, look at their schedule, likely to go unbeaten. Clemson, likely to win out. There's your ACC. SMU, probably looking at their schedule. If they go to form, they're going to be 11-1. Then you go to the Big 12. Iowa State and BYU don't play one another. Are they going to be both sitting at 11-1 or 12-0 when they play each other? The Notre Dame very likely to win out. They're going to be 11-1. There's some teams in the SEC that could, certainly Texas, I didn't mention them. They're likely favored in their remaining games. What does that look like? So I guess if there's not too many upsets in the next month, like I mentioned, there's going to be, and this has never been the case, there's going to be some teams that are left out of this playoff that might be sitting here at 11-1-ish. When does that happen? You don't even make a 12-team playoff at 11-1. There's probably going to be some really good SEC teams at 10-2 that get left out, like an Ole Miss, maybe an Alabama, an LSU. can't imagine even if those teams are sitting at 10-2. Can't imagine all of them teams making it. Does Notre Dame get left out at 11-1 because of a lack of a strength of schedule? And we haven't even talked about the group of 5. There could be a nightmare scenario there where, say, Army wins out, goes unbeaten, beats Notre Dame in the process. Okay, they're likely to be the group of 5 playoff team, or are they? Are they going to jump Boise State, who, if they win out, I mean, their only loss is going to be the number 1 team in the country, Oregon, by 3. So I know I just painted a ton there, but again, if we don't get upsets or more than usual, then yeah, we got to. I don't envy the playoff committee making their decision.
Yeah, great points. I mean, it can be very nuts. You never would suspect it with 12 teams out of the 134 or whatever are going to have the 11-1s really be discussed because of snubbing. I mean, I think that's a very scary scenario brought up. I got a few of them myself.
Okay.
Number one, for the first one is the Big 12 kind of combusts the last few weeks down the stretch, and somehow Colorado is sitting there, and the Big 12 champion might have 2 losses, and then the one they beat has 3 losses. You have Colorado sitting there with 2 losses. You're looking at prime time as a coach. You're looking at possibly the Heisman winner. That's some pretty good ratings and some good money, coming in for a playoff. I think that's a scary
I like it.
scenario.
It's a TV show. So, I mean, I'm telling you, if I'm on the committee and I'm thinking dollars, Colorado's probably in.
Absolutely. I think the networks influence things more than people know. So that's a scary scenario for everybody to think about. And then the next one is the SMU goes the rest of the way undefeated. They're going to be complaining. They're going to say Indiana's got 1 loss to Ohio State, yet they didn't beat anybody. SMU is going to have that same type of argument there with 1 loss. And it's, that's tough, and it was an early loss into it could be to the Big 12 champion in BYU. So that's a scary scenario. And I guess I can flip it if Pitt happens to win, and we'll discuss that game. If Pitt happens to win, maybe they just lose to Clemson, and then they're complaining, right? So that's scary scenario number 2, Brad. But I have the scariest scenario for you, my friend. It's Boise State finishes the rest of the season not losing, while Army goes undefeated, and the playoff selection is on December 8th. They have to put them in, and then they lose to Navy in the Army-Navy game afterwards. Oh, my God. How much chaos would that be, Brad?
That is the nightmare scariest scenario, no question. Definitely possible that can happen. Although, I don't think Army's beating Notre Dame.
I don't think so either, but
we're going to be talking a little tease later. We're going to be talking Army here in a little bit when you ask me one of these questions, and it's not going to portray Army too well. So, yeah, but that would be. I mean, they lose. That's crazy that we're thinking about this. The first year of the playoff, the Army-Navy game being unbelievably important. And they could be playing each other back-to-back weeks. How would that be?
I know, and I don't think the committee can put both Boise and Army in. It's crazy, right? But
you almost have to, though, right? I mean, especially if they're unbeaten.
Well, then you're snubbing you're snubbing a 2 or 3 loss of Alabama or Ohio State. That could happen, or a Penn State. It's a massive team you're going to be snubbing to put both of those in. And this is the most chaotic situation that I can think of. And, Army, their schedule hasn't been good, but just that 1 Notre Dame win would boost them in. Of course, this is the scary scenario. It's not the probable scenario, but man, the fact that they played the Army-Navy game on the following week after the playoffs are selected is just hilarious to me. I would wonder if they would delay it for that, And how could you? Because they need time to prepare for these games, Brad.
I don't think they can. I mean, you got travel plans. Obviously, you're dealing with more games than usual with the 12-team playoff. You're dealing with home sites. The home teams are going to want to know where they're playing. So, yeah, I don't think you can delay it. That's why they're probably big Notre Dame fans coming up there in that Army game.
They're going to be drinking some Irish beer and dancing I don't know, instant jig, or is that a Scottish? I don't know. Whatever. They're going to be drinking some Guinness. Let's just say that. Let's move on to buy low, sell high, and you kind of hinted here a little bit. Buy low. I'm gonna say I'm gonna go with buy low. I'm gonna go with NC State. So I've seen kind of something in them recently a little bit. My efficiency numbers kind of like them. I like them coming off a bye here. I might be using them as my survivor play this week. They had a great effort against Cal, and CJ Brett Bailey he's slinging the ball. I think they could be a little bit sneaky now that they've improved. I see improvement with them, Brad.
That's a good selection. I bet them this week. I like them quite a bit this week. I like the spot. They're off a bye. They're taking on a Stanford team, playing a 7 straight week, 4 straight cross country. Stanford's lost, 5 in a row, or 6 in a row. I love NC State this week. I found it peculiar that line ticked up today, sneaky from 9.5 to 10, but I'm okay even laying 10 there. So you're right, Bailey. I like Bailey. I watched him in the Army All-American game last year. Underrated prospect, 4-star kid, one of the higher rated ones that NC State's ever signed, at least at a quarterback position. But dare I say, he's been, obviously Grayson McCall had a ton of experience, but he can never stay healthy. Dare I say that Bailey, by the end of this season, be better than McCall, at least throwing the football. I don't know. I've seen back-to-back 300-yard games. So, man, that's a good selection.
Oh, thank you. And I honestly think McCall's just too injured. He's taken a beating too much in his career, and one of those situations where what a wonderful group of 5 quarterback, but I don't see a lot of future with him. What about you? What about a buy low team?
I'm going to give you 2. And I'm going to they're going to be name brands that you're like, oh, come on. But I don't think they're getting talked about enough. One being Clemson. I think the whole country forgot about them when they got beat up by Georgia in the opener. Don't look now, but they won every game since. I like the spot for that. Speaking of spots, I like the spot for them this week off a bye. Louisville's playing a 7 straight week. Louisville's played 6 consecutive close games. I think, finally Clemson plays a little bit of more of a name brand team. They hammer Louisville like I expect this week. That's going to be, people are going to start noticing. I like Clemson also to beat Miami in the ACC championship game. So, again, I don't see Clemson losing a game until the playoff. Another team that's sneaking, that's quietly been playing exceptionally well since week 3. They have the largest margin of victory of any team in the country. Fighting Irish. I don't think people threw them in the trash. The Northern Illinois loss. They quietly have played very well. So those are my 2 buy low teams that I think are capable of obviously making the playoff, also capable of winning a game or 2 in the playoff.
Are you feeling okay, Brad, selecting the Irish here, man? I don't know. Is this the Brad Powers we've had on for 4 Halloween shows, actually on his team for once?
I've been on in the last 3 weeks. I started watching some film. Keep in mind, Riley Leonard was hurt last season at Duke. He was hurt during the spring, didn't take any reps. Obviously didn't look great early in the season, getting better. I think Pro Football Focus just tweeted that since week 3, he's the 4th highest graded quarterback in the country. You get that kind of play down the stretch. Notre Dame's defense playing as well as they are. Be careful, though, fighting Irish. I mean, they're especially in today's day and age, and where there's no super team like 2019 LSU or 2020 Alabama. I'm just saying that I think they're going to make the playoff.
Well, man, I think I'm on Clemson too, and I agree with that. Here's the problem. Now you're starting to talk me. I haven't used Clemson as a survivor yet, and I'm like, I was looking at that one. I'm like, Louisville can be a pest, but Clemson's defense is just way better than Miami's. Miami kind of got by with that overturned pass, and I was a little worried about Louisville in this one, but I'm looking at Mississippi State, and I'm like, UMass might go in there and just possibly beat these guys. I can't trust Mississippi State, and of course, this is a massive spot for them because they need to win. But there's not a lot out there, Brad, that I can't save for later. So those are like the 3 I was looking at.
Mississippi State would be a good one. I like all those options. I think you hold Clemson for later.
Yeah, maybe, because I can use them as for the conference championship, but I've been holding Boise for that too. There's still a ton of people. Yeah,
Look at you. You're in a good position.
Yeah, dude, there's still half the people on this thing. I mean, there hasn't been nearly enough upsets for it, but it's $100,000 pot, so I'm trying to make a little bit of
I think
leeway.
I certainly lean Mississippi State minus the points, so I think you're okay.
Yeah, yeah, okay. I got three good options here. May they all win. Let's go with that. I'm gonna go to sell high now, Brad, and I'll let you go first. Who are you selling high? And maybe you hinted on it.
It's Army. Haven't played anybody yet. I bet against them this week against Air Force. Not saying Air Force is going to beat them, but I mean, remarkable that they were catching 3 touchdowns last year in this matchup. Now they're laying 3 touchdowns for the first time ever. They've covered pretty much every game. Bryson Daly's putting up unbelievable stats, but again, against who? The toughest team they played was their last game, and depending on the number you got, you might not have covered with Army against East Carolina. And then I look at the schedule. I'm going to call for it. I think they lose to North Texas next week. North Texas off a bye. That'll be the toughest game to date for Army. And I think they lose the week before the all-important game against Notre Dame. And I think Notre Dame, second time seeing the option, is going to be a very tough hill to climb. So an unbeaten Army team, I think when it's all said and done, probably finishes with 2-3 losses. So I'm selling Army against the spread and winning these games straight up.
Brad, you're losing. You're ruining my terrible scenario for the committee. You're ruining it, my man. Boo.
I'm sorry.
Boo. No, it's all right. No, actually, you're answering these completely right because that's why you do this. It's not like you're necessarily betting Army or fading them this week. You want to wait to a certain week. This is why we do buy low, sell high. Perfectly said, man. Sniper West, I like Sailor. Are you betting Navy this week? I don't know, man. Could this be a tell for Navy? I guess we're going to have to find out when we get to that. I'm going to go with TCU to sell high. I saw him lose to Houston. And actually, Houston, I was on last week against Utah. I couldn't believe the line went away from me from 4 to 5. I was really shocked because Utah was absolutely putrid against TCU. But I don't think TCU is that good. And I'm watching the Baylor line. I'm frustrated with Baylor because I lost games on them earlier this year that I shouldn't have. I think Baylor's a better team, but I'm frustrated with that. So there's a spot I want to fade TCU. I'm not sure if it's this week. But, Brad, I think that they're actually pretty fraudulent.
Agree. I can tell you this. If you time the market right, Baylor's going to get some money this week. Just saying, from the guys I talked to. I don't think that closes 3. I think it closes north of 3, but what they're looking for is somebody to get cute and take TCU, and then they'll come out over the top. But I'm just telling you, that line's not closing 3. It's closing above 3.
All right, man. I'm on it, too. Step on a duck, Josh. Both these guys are awesome. It's a wonderful show. Thank you. And excited to hear your thoughts on the Navy bounce back. We'll get to that. And he likes NC State too. So we're both, all 3 of us are at NC State.
Yeah, I like NC State.
Me too, man. I think it's a perfect spot for them to actually get it going. Dave Duran. And I was on Killer Sports Database, and they're like 65% or something. After a bye week, Dave Duran is 63.6%, so pretty good after a bye week. So I was looking up that stat before the show to talk about that. So let's talk some games then, man. And we can't ignore Halloween week, and we got a question from Walker as well. Well, let's get to Walker's question real quick, actually. The only other question I have, because he wants us to break down a game too, is a team like Georgia or Texas trying to avoid the SEC conference game to get an extra bye and a home playoff game, especially because the A&M and LSU scenario. So I think I understand that, right? He wants to know if it's better to avoid the situation.
It's a really good question. And I've talked about this a little bit. I think the sneaky, this is going to be as far as your portfolio when the playoffs get announced. I think a team to add would be that 5 seed. I think is the sneaky seed you want because you get a home playoff game. You're likely playing the group of 5 champ. And then you win that game. You're playing the lowest rated conference champ, likely to be like a Big 12 team with multiple losses. You'll probably be favored in that game. So obviously you got to play the 1 seed then in the semifinals. But by the time you get to semifinals, everybody's good. So I do think getting a home playoff game is very advantageous. Getting a bye, not playing an SEC championship game, I think could be advantageous. And I think there's a sweet spot there for some teams.
That is interesting how it is set up, how the 5 really sticks out. What a great question. Thank you, Walker. Amazing question. I think that makes a lot of sense. 5 seed looking pretty sweet. All right, let's get some games then. Let's talk Halloween night. I mean, Tulane versus Charlotte. Charlotte plus 16, I think, total 55. I think this has went down a little bit, though, Brad. I did write this at the end of the morning, and I think it might have switched right after that. I'm seeing, got 14 and a half? It went down again.
A little bit of Charlotte money.
Charlotte money's coming in 55 and a half. Do you agree with that money?
No, not that I bet Tulane. I can't get there. I mean, my power ratings are closer to 16 than they were 14 and a half. So I would lean Tulane, even though it's a short week. I know they played a bunch of plays defensively last week in their game against North Texas. But where I have made a bet and what I'd prefer is actually the over. I think Charlotte, obviously, I think people forget they were really banged up at the start of the year, particularly on offense. Been, mixing and matching their quarterbacks in and out of the lineup, several different quarterbacks. Starting to see some signs against East Carolina, move the football against Memphis. And again, Tulane's defense might be a little tuckered out, traveling back-to-back weeks and facing a bunch of plays last week. So over 55 and a half for me.
Okay, over. There you go. I wasn't thinking that. My number was 13 and a half, but I didn't get to it just because I just kind of looked at every facet of the game, and I just felt like Tulane's kind of better everywhere, and I just it was just a situation where I don't know if Charlotte can be consistent enough, and they can certainly turn the ball over if they're flustered. I will say Charlotte has stepped up big in a lot of first halves. I'm like wondering, maybe do I look at the first half for Charlotte here at home here and split that baby right in half, and maybe get over 7 and a half, 8 points, something like that. That's not a bad look at all if you're dying to play some college football on while you're trick-or-treating or while your kids are trick-or-treating. What you do is put your phone on the stroller. I already got this down from years of experience. Put it on the stroller, just gonna push it around like that. Be like, and if they're too old to get in the stroller, just tell them to give them a ride, man. That's the way to do it. So little word from the wise here, or the 3 kids and a lot of experience. Well, yeah, I think I'm gonna look at the half here. I'm not giving up on this game yet. It could be a play or a personal play if I decide here. Let's move on to a game coming up on Saturday then. And at the end of the day, we'll get to some of these questions and a couple of these requests. But Georgia, Florida, I wrote 16 and a half and a total of 52, Brad. This is interesting for Georgia. I feel like this spread was a lot bigger before the season. Did Georgia get right against Texas is the big question. This is the greatest cocktail party, or the biggest cocktail party in the world, they call it, played in Jacksonville. Total, like you said, 52. This one is interesting to me because it's hard for me to believe what Georgia is. Are they the team that beat Texas, or the team that just has been inconsistent all year? Maybe you can break it down a little bit.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head in that regard. I mean, what Georgia shows up, the one that we saw in the second half against Clemson, the one that we saw in the first half against Texas. I mean, because that right there is the best team in the country. Or is it the one that almost lost to Kentucky on the road, or only beat Mississippi State at home by 10? Is it that Georgia, the one that fell behind an Alabama team that now looks overrated, 28-0? Or is it the one that almost came back and beat Alabama on the road after falling behind 4 touchdowns? I tend to think a rival, particularly Kirby, played at Georgia. He does not like Florida. You've seen him in the second half of games put an extra score or 2 on the board the last 3 years in those matchups. I tend to think we'll see good Georgia here. And if that's the case, I think the number's a little light. I made it 18, which it means that I bet Georgia this week. Although I'll say this, I would prefer to kind of attack it in a different way. I lean over, certainly. I think Florida might be able to move the football. DJ Lagway gives Florida's offense a higher upside, particularly with his deep passes. something that Graham Mertz was dinking and dunking. You just can't do that against Georgia. So I wouldn't be as shocked if Florida hit a couple big plays. And then if Georgia's got to keep pace, keep the foot on the gas pedal a little bit. I'm looking at a Georgia team total, looking to play like over 34.5.
That makes sense. And looking at like I said, the numbers. What do you believe is the question. Sometimes that's what it really comes down to. I hate inconsistent teams, Brad. They're the high variances. They're bankroll killers sometimes, and you can be on them at the wrong time and be off them at the wrong time. Right? It's just the way it is for these teams. And yeah, different quarterback now for Florida. And you're right, Graham Mertz's ADOT was extremely low. He was dinking and dunking, and that doesn't work against a defense like Georgia's. And Georgia, number 17th in defensive success rate. That's a little bit lower than they have been in the past, but still pretty good. They're improving there a little bit on defense. It's not going to be the best defense you've seen from Georgia, but it gives Florida. Can they backdoor it? I think both of us took Florida over 4.5 though for our win total, Brad. I think we need one more, don't we?
Need one more. I took under 5.5. That's where I'm at on it. So it's going to be. Can't have them pulling any upsets here. Because they're going to beat Florida State. They're going to beat Florida State in the finale. So there's 5. So you're sitting pretty. Although, have you seen the schedule coming up here?
Oh, it's terrible.
It's Georgia, it's LSU, it's Texas, it's Ole Miss. I don't know where the win is out of those 4.
No, I know. It's tough. I don't have a play on this one. I would lean to the over too, because Georgia will put up points for sure against this bad Florida defense. And this Florida defense is bad. It's real bad. And maybe the first half over too is something to look at too. But I'm going to dive into this. I'm going to write that down as a lead. But you laid it with 16.5, right? For Florida.
I did lay it. I took late 15, but anything under 17 is good. But again, the over I think is pretty solid. Florida's defense, statistically looks okay the last couple weeks. They haven't played anybody. Tennessee's offense is struggling. UCF's offense is struggling. Kentucky's offense leaves a lot to be desired. They are really stepping up in class here. I also think, you give Kirby 2 weeks to prep for a true freshman quarterback. I don't know if that's good stuff for Florida. I think there'll be some turnovers here and some short fields. So over's my preference.
All right, the over. And I'm guessing no hurricanes or rain you got to worry about for this one. I always like to get the best update I can for some of these situations, but Florida, Georgia, we're looking at a 41.9% chance of rain, but no real wind. Yeah, I'm gonna wait a little bit and see what I can do, because I think rain might even give Florida a little bit more, the dog a little bit more money, so it might knock it down a little bit more if that's the case. So, but you have a good number. We'll move on to the next game. And let me pull up we have Northwestern versus Purdue. What a great game to watch, Brad.
Who selected this one? I'm joking. I'm joking with
guilty, man. I'm guilty. Just like you say, Brad, it's like just because the game is ugly and unwatchable doesn't mean you can't bet on it. Total of 46. Yep. It just goes back to a rule, and I already said it when I was talking NFL earlier. It's like when two bad teams play each other, you take the points, and I did take 2.5. It's down to 1.5, but I still like it. And the game's gross. Maybe it's just one you just kind of flick back and forth, and in case there's commercials on one of your TVs. And as bad as Purdue's been, they've put up a pretty good effort at Illinois, like you said. And that game against Oregon, they had a lot of yards against Oregon. Maybe Oregon was in cover 2 the whole time and just tightening it up and down there. I don't know. But, I thought that, they're kind of at that point where they can shift it a little bit. Northwestern has only one top 15 game, and that's against Indiana. And they were bounced 41-24. They haven't done a lot. The Boilers played 2 top 10 teams, Notre Dame and Oregon. They played some tough teams. They played Wisconsin in a bad spot where Wisconsin had to show life after a bye. And net yards per play, the teams are pretty close. Wildcats minus 0.63, Boilers at minus 0.71. I would have expected them to be a little bit worse. Purdue ranks 100th in offensive EPA. Northwestern's 131st in EPA on offense. They're one of the worst teams on offense in the land. Another issue for Northwestern is they've been without their starting kicker for a past month or so. So the backup's just okay. He's 4-7. If you don't have a good field goal kicker in a game like this, that's your loss, man. Purdue coming off the bye. I like those spots. I think they have a lot of time to get some stuff fixed. They're going to fight. I'll take them at 1.5 too. So we'll put them at 1.5.
I also took the points in the game. It was with Northwestern when they were an underdog. I hear you on taking the points in a bad game. I guess if there's one unit I trust the most, it's probably Northwestern's defense. So there's that. I also think the coaching staff for Northwestern's a little bit better than Purdue's, who's might be on the chopping block. But I hear you. The spot screams Purdue. Northwestern's offense is terrible. Purdue's played the tougher schedule. It was not one. It was a bet that I made because I thought, Northwestern will flip favorite because Purdue, there's money comes in against Purdue every single week since the Notre Dame game. People just bet against Purdue.
Would you get 2.5?
Yeah, with Northwestern. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. It's like we both. It was funny. It's a 5-point difference, but there's not much room for error here.
There isn't. So, and crossing through zero is not that big of a move. I thought Northwestern would close 1.5. So not a big play. I mean, if you tell me it's your play of the week, if you tell me it's your play of the week and it's your big bet, then I'll root for you. I have enough bets that I can take a loser.
It's my lowest play of the week, so you don't have to worry about that.
Okay.
I'm not going to put a big one on Purdue. 1.5 stars is what I put it as. I mean, that's pretty much close. That's getting a lean territory right there. But yeah, Purdue wins like one with both winners. So there you go. This probably means to stay away from the game from people that are probably out there listening right now. Let's move on to the next game, and Texas A&M versus South Carolina. South Carolina plus 2.5. Total is 44. Brad, you picked this game to talk about, but I might have been in on this one on late Sunday night or early Monday morning. But why don't you break down what you have for us on this one?
Yeah, I like South Carolina. I bet them, obviously, but I actually think they win the game here. And I don't say that too often. I know it's not a big underdog role at this point, but there's been a lot of money on South Carolina that's moved it down to a key number 3. I like the spot. They're off a bye. I think another thing at this point in the season, yeah, we see that Florida Georgia game. Yeah, that's they're really wanting to move the games to campuses. I know there's getting proponents on that. I don't mind that, honestly.
Yeah. The next coming year is Josh is saying over here, but yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, as far as South Carolina goes, at this point in the season, I'm always like, well, what's the line if you change one play? And they got 2 different games where you change one play in the game, they win them. What's this line? They're probably favored. That's the LSU and Alabama games. 2 games South Carolina could have easily won. There was multiple plays in both of those games that if it went South Carolina's way, they win the game against LSU and Alabama. So I think they're a little underrated. I certainly think their defensive line is one of the absolute best in all of college football. They cause havoc. That's A&M's weakness right now because they're not totally healthy on that offensive line. I'm not buying Marcel Reed because he came off the bench and led the big win over LSU. They benched Marcel Reed to go back to Wegman after a few games because the offense kept getting worse with that every week. And speaking of some misleading games, they've been outgained in 3 of their last 4 games, A&M. So, yeah, the LSU scoreboard looks good, but the reality is they were outgained in that one. LSU, 3 turnovers, 3 missed field goals. So, add all that together, I like South Carolina outright. I will say this. It's not all sunshine and rainbows with South Carolina. The Sellers needs to take care of the football. And I need that offensive line for South Carolina not to get dominated by that really good A&M front.
Yeah, that's my biggest worry is A&M's defensive front here. That's number 4 in defensive line yards. And, offensive line yards, you're looking at 83rd for South Carolina at the advanced stats here. That's some of the stuff I've written down here. I took South Carolina +4 for it was my biggest play of the week. Took that on Sunday night or Monday morning. I can't remember what it was, but it is down to 2.5. But I still lean South Carolina. Actually, no, I'd take South Carolina at 2.5. So I agree with you, Brad. I'll put this down for you at +2.5. Now, here's the thing. I don't know why you go back to Wegman either, because he's not the future, and he is not a good quarterback at all. I thought that before the Notre Dame game, and that's why I bet Notre Dame when everyone's whining about their offensive line being hurt. I was like, I still like Notre Dame, and that worked out for me. But it's just it's one of those situations like the Flacco effect. Once you put Marcel Reed in the game, he starts running the ball, and all of a sudden they're getting yards. He's like that guy to put in the game. So I will say, if they start Wegman and I got a nice lead and they put Marcel Reed in, I might buy back a little bit just on that effect. But I think they're starting Wegman, right? And that I think that's even bodes a little bit.
They haven't decided yet. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I absolutely would not do that, but they might. So I don't know. But either way, I like the value at +2.5 still. South Carolina, like you said, is a much better team than we thought. Beamer's doing great out there. It is a situation where you look at, like you said, and I like some of the people that put out, what if the one-score games were flipped? South Carolina was just a couple of dumb plays away. And when it comes to that, and you have a decent coach, that gets fixed through the season. Kind of the same reason I like NC State in a way. It's like I think South Carolina gets the big W here in a tough SEC. Plus, you're getting 2.5 points at home. Low total of 44 really makes those points even worth more, in my opinion. Let's stick in the SEC. Ole Miss versus Arkansas. Arkansas +7. Total is 53.5. And Brad, I keep scaring these big SEC favorites because I'm also going against Ole Miss here, and this is a very interesting conference because I think it is still probably maybe the best conference there, but they're just beating each other up. And this is another situation where they're going to beat each other up, in my opinion. I look at Ole Miss, and they rank great on the numbers: 5th in offensive EPA, 3rd in defensive EPA, net 3.47 yards per play, number 1 in the nation. How the hell do they have 2 losses? Well, I'll tell you why. They beat up a bunch of crap teams, man. And once they started playing the SEC, it didn't look so good, man. And they struggled against LSU, losing by 3 points. Kentucky, what was that, man? But it's like they haven't even been impressive for a game like that. And there's a glaring reason why this is a 7-point spread, because they were overrated coming in my opinion. And Arkansas, they played 3 ranked teams. They have a nice big win at home against Tennessee. The team that just beat Alabama in Tennessee. Bobby Petrino, solid. He's solid with the Hogs. I think he's in a perfect situation. Doesn't have to feel the head coach pressures, but he's calling a lot of plays. They just crushed Mississippi State by 30 points, man. The momentum's with them. Ole Miss only outgained Oklahoma by 51 yards. That's putrid, man. I don't care what the final score says of that one. Over the last 10 games, Brad, between these two teams, did you know that Arkansas is 9-1 against the spread over the past 10 games? Yeah, right on covers, you can bring that up. That is a massive stat to me, too, being that it's that big of a discrepancy. They don't want to play the lane train. I'm taking the Hogs. Woo pig suey, my man. +7, 2.5 stars.
There you go. Man, the Ole Miss offense, night and day, what they did non-conference to compare to what they're doing in conference. They're averaging 31 points per game less in SEC play, 265 yards per game less in SEC play, completing about 15% less of the completions, averaging about 150 yards per game less. Offensive line's been atrocious. So you look at some of the, the blocking grades, pressure rates allowed, they're like in the bottom 10, 15 in the country since week 5. And I would say the strength of Arkansas's defense is their front. So it really comes down to this. If Ole Miss can protect, I'd be worried that they can hit some big shots in that Arkansas secondary. If they can't protect, like they haven't been able to do the last 3-4 weeks, then, Arkansas is going to be very live here. We'll see if Trey Harris plays. That's big for Ole Miss. It opens up their pass game. He's by far the best wide receiver.
For sure. Good point. I think he could be out.
I lean under. Depending, it's a game where me personally, I'd lay 6.5, 6, which I did, or I take above the key number of 7. So I'll cop out there and go under. One thing I do like Ole Miss's defense. I'll say that.
Their defense. The defense is really what's been saving them in these conference games.
Absolutely,
that's very true. But you got a quarterback that's dynamic in Arkansas, so that's kind of why I like the 7 here. It could be one of those. Could be a little money line sprinkle going on in that one too.
There you go.
I like that side, so we'll keep it at that. So you're pretty neutral, but you like the under. I don't disagree with that. You know, it's funny. My buddy keeps coming to me. I'm betting these Ole Miss over. I'm like, dude, stop betting Ole Miss overs. Please stop. You're killing yourself. And he
Yeah,
lost again.
they're 7-1 in the under this year.
Yeah, absolutely. It's because of that defense for sure. All right, well, let's go to a game that you picked. Pitt versus SMU. SMU minus 7.5 total, 58.5. Brad, there's something that you're bringing here because it's 7.5. Pitt's undefeated, top ranked team. Well, one of the better ranked teams, not top, but then SMU sitting with one loss that keeps aging well with BYU. What are your thoughts on this one?
So I'm gonna lay it here with SMU. Now I will say you can put me down for 7.5, but I will say for those that are always wanting to get the best price, wait, because we got two quarterback situations here where both are questionable. So if you time it right, I think you can get a better price on SMU. But quite simply, why I think they're the right side here. There's very few opportunities in a season where you can take advantage of incredible turnover disparities. On one hand, I got a Pitt team that was +5 in turnovers last week, had 3 pick sixes against Syracuse in that game. Very misleading final there last Thursday night. On the other side, I got an SMU team that was -6 in turnovers last week, somehow won the football game, became only the second team in the last 226 games to have a -6 turnover margin and win the game. That's since 2000. 2 out of 126. So that tells me they're underrated. The fact that they're still able to win that game. I think Pitt's offense, obviously, kudos for Narduzzi for making a change. They're much improved. They're running tempo. Full season stats say they're good. Trend line is not good, though. Cal game, they scored 0, big fat 0 in the last 40 minutes of the game. I know because I bet Pitt in that game. I like the spot for them in that game.
I lost on that one too. I
Yeah,
lost on the
0
hook.
in the last 40 minutes. Then I just got done saying, oh, they scored 41 against Syracuse. No, Pitt scored 41. The Pitt offense didn't score 41. In fact, the Pitt defense outscored the Pitt offense in that game. They only put up 217 yards. Eli Holstein banged up. Will he play? Will he not play? We'll see. The one thing with SMU, okay, if their backup gets in there, Preston Stone's got a ton of experience, probably one of the best backup quarterbacks in the country. I get why they moved to Jennings because he can move around and run around a bit, but that it all for me. I think SMU is not fraudulent, particularly their defense, where Pitt, I think it's a fraudulent team. Yeah, again, I go back to this, change a couple plays in their season. Fortunate win against West Virginia. Very fortunate win against Cincinnati. Cal missed field goals and extra points in that game. Otherwise, that's a loss. So I think they were almost a team that I said sell as far as Pitt. They haven't really played anybody, and they could easily have 2-3 losses.
All right, laying it with SMU. My power number is 5, so I guess I have some slight disagreement. Of course, if the quarterback's out, SMU has a much better backup. So I think that's the big point, and it's almost like a free roll in there because if Pitt's quarterback's out, it should be higher. I'm not impressed with either of these two teams' schedules that much. You know, neither of them really played a good team. I mean, it's SMU, the BYU, obviously, but then everyone's saying how fraudulent BYU is and all that. And I don't think they're completely fraudulent. They're definitely not as good as their ranking or their record, but you know, I need the information on the quarterbacks, man. I mean, that's everything to me on this one. It really is. And the problem with Pittsburgh is that their defense is not good, but their offense is so good that I think they can backdoor a few teams if that quarterback's in, and you got 7.5 points of backdoor possibility. So you have a slight disagreement with me, but it's not something I'm running to bet right now or nothing. But yeah, both of these teams should not even be in discussion of the playoffs, in my opinion. And sorry, ACC fans, that's what probably both Brad and I think about this. Let's move on to the next one. And are we to the big baby yet? Are we? Yes, we are. Ohio State versus Penn State. Penn State plus 3.5. Let's say I see some hard threes out there, but plus 3.5 total 45.5. Brad, this is the biggest game of the week. It always is. I feel like this does fall on the Halloween weekend. I feel like we've talked about this before. The way I'm approaching this one is I used to take Penn State always in the first half and then make a second half play during the game on Ohio State, and that was before live betting. I just play Ohio State second half, but then I just do it live. Whatever, it's the same thing. As a matter of fact, a lot of second half lines are going away because of live betting. But I don't know what I'm going to get out of Penn State. They destroyed my Badgers last week. A lot of due to incompetent coaching, and I ranted about that for a long time about how you have the momentum and then you throw the ball over the middle deep in your territory. That was absolutely
Oh, it's awful. Punt.
boneheaded
Go
setup.
play defense.
Dude, it's like punt it. You have the momentum, and if you're gonna
You miss that old
throw,
Badgers offense running the football a little bit.
it was so predictable. They were running the first two plays and throwing it over the middle. It's like it was so predictable everything was going to happen by how stupid Phil Longo was there. But I ranted about him enough, and unfortunately, I'm a Bears fan too, so you can imagine how my weekend.
Oh no!
You can imagine how my weekend last weekend. I'm taking the under the first half, and I took it under 23.5, Brad. I'm just going to say this. Penn State, yeah, they did get momentum, and the Badger defense crumbled. And it was all Andy Kotelnicki and just him being a better offensive coordinator. But at the same time, there's a lot of questions. So, I mean, are you really going to like Drew Allard just not always taking the first team reps all week and then just kind of walking in? He'll still be hurt. If he starts this game, he's not going to be perfect. Or do you think, you're going to put your money on Bo Prabula? I don't even know how to say his name properly. And I guess I've heard that he's going to be the future of Penn State, but against Ohio State, not a great spot for him. I think this is a game that Penn State wants to play defense in their territory, kind of stuff Ohio State, in Ohio State territory, I should say, right? Just force a lot of punts, ugly up this game. Yet Ohio State has not been that impressive to me. I think that a lot of the stuff that their fans say about Ryan Day is kind of true. He doesn't call the right plays at the right time, and Ohio State's defense might be their best unit. It might not be their offense. It might be their best defense just because they have some receivers that can really open it up. Doesn't mean that they're used correctly. And Penn State, they always have cornerbacks that can run with receivers like that, Brad. I saw that against Wisconsin. One thing they did do is shut down Pauling and a couple other Badgers. I like the first half under. I think I'm just going to stick with that.
Total agreement. I think first half under is the way to attack it now that the full game's come down a few points in the last couple of days. I did bet the full game under, but I do expect conservative game plans early to fill each other out. What I don't like about Ohio State right now is that offensive line's banged up. They lost their left tackle in the Oregon game, probably their best offensive lineman. The guy that replaced him played the next 6 quarters, had like a pass blocking grade of like 15.8 on a scale of 0 to 100. He was the 7th worst offensive tackle in college football during that time period. You don't usually get that when you're talking about Ohio State at that level. He's hurt now too. So what they had to do is put the left guard at left tackle and move somebody else in. They don't know exactly what's going to happen as far as this week. They're thinking they're going to get the backup back, but is he going to be 100%? Last team I want to play is Penn State with their pass rush. Abdul Carter off the edge. We'll see if Dennis Sutton plays for them. He's banged up. Aller's banged up. Prabula runs it. Ohio State's defense, I think I can count on because, Penn State to me is not going to beat them over the top like Dylan Gabriel did. So, I watched last year's game. It was a snooze fest, especially early.
It was.
I think we're getting something similar here. So you concur completely under the 23.5 first half.
All right. Sounds good. So under 23.5, we both agree on that. You also, and just a quick recap before we get some questions, you like SMU minus 7.5, South Carolina plus 2.5, Georgia minus 16.5.
Yep.
Georgia, did you like the over 2? Should we throw that down or no?
It's not widely available. I like the Georgia team total more than anything, over 34.5.
Okay. All right. So was Clemson minus 11 a play against Louisville?
Nah, more of a lean. I'm waiting for it. I don't want to get that out there too much. I'm hoping to lay 10. I'm greedy. So I'm hoping that comes down, and then I'm going to jump right in. So
don't bet it. Don't bet it. All right. wait for us. No, fair enough. So there you go with your that was a recap. So step on a duck. UNC defense maybe their best performance of the season last week, and they came off the bye last week, and I was kicking myself because I didn't bet them, Brad. I was really close to it. I'm mad I didn't bet UNC. Now, what about Florida State? Can they carry this over to Florida State this week? And I heard another person that I really respect liked North Carolina minus 2.5. I'm mad that I miss it, and I'd even be madder if I lost on it the next week. But what are your thoughts on that?
I can't get my power rating there, but with that being said, I still bet North Carolina this week. That could have been the buy sign. I was impressed. I thought their season was over off the buy. They had their best performance. What's Florida State got to play for now? Nothing. No bowl game. You just played your rival. I mean, I don't know how they can keep up offensively. So yeah, Mac Brown's never beat Florida State in his career. He's 0-8. This is his last year. He's done after this year, Mac Brown. So this would be a good little win for him in his career.
Without a doubt, man. I agree. I have it around 4. I don't know why I haven't bet it yet. Probably because I freaking hate road favorites, But
Yeah, I hear you.
It's just
they're a tough team to trust too. When you talk that, last week was the first time they covered a game this season. Because I was like, why didn't I bet this game? Then I look, oh, that's why they hadn't covered a game.
That's why.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one thing I didn't go over is the ATS margins, but I will take a week off that. Let's move on to another question then. And Walker wants to know about Georgia Southern versus South Alabama. He's going to be in attendance for that game, right? So, Brad, he'd like to know if he's going to be betting on attendance or maybe live betting, or what your thoughts are on this one.
I didn't bet it, unfortunately. I made it like 5. I mean, exactly. I made it 5.7, so that's just not enough of an edge there. And I didn't bet the total. South Alabama is a team to keep an eye on statistically, far superior. If you to start diving in the yards per play margins and whatnot, you're gonna be like, how is this line only 6? But keep in mind, one of those data points was that game against Northwestern State where they won 87-10 or whatever it was,
Right.
or 87-0. So you got to kind of throw that one out. But if I had to bet it, and I haven't yet, I would actually lean with the home team here.
South Alabama messed up my Monroe ticket last week, which made me upset. I thought Monroe was in a decent spot to, I thought they were kind of still my buy-on team, and they weren't. It was weird. They're up by 7 too. It was like 7.5. I lost on that one. That was tough. But South Alabama is a very momentum-based team too, so I could see this going either way as well. I'm probably right. I'm actually right at the number, I think, on this one. Let's talk about Vanderbilt, man. Hugh Freeze's worst nightmare, if you want to talk about Halloween, his worst nightmare is Pavia, Diego Pavia. He freaking cannot go to sleep at night, man. He wakes up thinking about Pavia every single morning. It's bugging him. It might even get worse after Halloween. What about the 6.5 here with Vandy, man? What do you think about that?
I don't know how you can't bet Vandy as a dog. They're 5-0 this year as a dog. 3 outright upsets, and easily could have 5 outright upsets. And I mean, if you're you beat Alabama, you could have beaten Texas. You probably should have beaten Missouri. You beat Kentucky, dominate that game. I'm greedy again. I'm greedy this year. You're around the key number. I'm waiting for a 7, and then I'm in on Vandy.
Well, if you were in a different state, Auburn is 7 at minus 105, and Vanderbilt's plus minus 115 at the old DK. So that's an opportunity for you to make a little drive. I'm surprised this keeps going this way. People just want to fade Vandy. God, this is a buy part. It's a buy. Auburn is just erratic sometimes. They can put up some yards, but they're pretty erratic. And you think about Vandy, though, and how they played Ball State and Georgia State. I was on Ball State that day. I needed Ball State to win to help me in Survivor that week, but they didn't. But it was certainly close, man. That was close in the second half. And looks like Josh likes Oklahoma minus 34.5, Manus a week in the trenches. It said surrendered 550,000 yards. Interesting. 575 yards in games this year, as we say. I wouldn't be surprised if they needed a slump buster. Wake up next to Maine in bed. Oklahoma sitting there, score 50. Yeah, sure. I mean, even Oklahoma should be able to beat somebody like that. I don't disagree. That's a under the radar game, right? That's a pretty under the radar game, Brad.
Yeah, I haven't bet it yet. I think it's available up at DK, not available here in Vegas. So I try to keep quiet on some of them, but I think he's on the right side. I can put it that way.
Well,
You don't
Oklahoma's
talk too much because, if I talk on a game like, oh, yeah, that's a great bet. And then all of a sudden, by the time I get around that bet, it's moved 3, 4, 5, 6 points on an FBS versus FCS game.
the conflict of Brad Powers
Yeah.
deciding between being dishonest and helping his bankroll or being honest and ruining his bankroll.
Yeah.
They should make a reality show on that, buddy. Yeah, I mean, the total's 46. I mean, they scored 50. Well, here you go. Now, Oklahoma's defense should shut them out. I like that. Thank you, Josh, for bringing that up. And that's one I'll write down as well. What about, it's funny. I was talking a little bit about this one. Disgusting game, Brad. Mississippi State hosting UMass. Believe it or not, I have UMass better than that in my power ratings that they have been in the past, but it's not that much better. And then if you look at the average power rating of Mississippi State, it's still below average. I mean, is this a safe survivor play for me? I don't know, but it sounds like you might lay the points.
Yeah, I made it 20. Power ranking's close, but then that's the start of a handicap. I think there is motivation for margin for Mississippi State off 7 straight losses. I watched them in their one time. The Toledo game was awful, but the one time they were laying a big number, they crushed Eastern Kentucky right back in week 1. Besides last week, I mean, I thought there were some buy signs from Mississippi State, and then they played Arkansas and got crushed. But I like their young true freshman quarterback. I like the receivers. UMass's first go around against the SEC wasn't good earlier this year against Missouri. I know Missouri's better than Mississippi State, but how much better are they? I don't think this Missouri team's that good. And obviously that was a bad spot for Missouri. They went up to Amherst and won by 42. So I think this is a 20, 21-point win for Mississippi State.
There you go. 21 and 21 points for Mississippi State. Makes sense. Indiana, Michigan State. Michigan State, a home dog, a plus 7.5, total 51.5. Curtis Warwick should be good for this one, shouldn't he?
That's the word. I'm waiting for him to officially get announced in, and then I'm betting Michigan State at a bigger number. I don't think he's going to be healthy. It's a thumb, on throwing hand. I think that obviously affects your ability to grip. Maybe it's Michigan State first half because I love the game scripts for Jonathan Smith. You watch these first half of games, he has it set up for his offense to be successful, including last week. Now, Michigan State going out and executing is a different thing. They're missing field goals, turning over in the red zone. But I think Michigan State's a side here. I think Indiana's starting to get to that point where they're starting to be a little overrated in the market.
True that. But Michigan last week had somehow 0 penalties. If you look at the box score, that was magical.
Well, that's interesting. In a rivalry game, 0 penalties?
Yeah, 0 penalties. Yeah, interesting.
I think Michigan State should have covered last week. They missed their great field goal kicker, missed a field goal right away. They should have been up like 10-0 or 14-0 out of the gate, but they blew that first scoring opportunity in the 1 yard line on the first drive of the game.
Totally.
And then they threw it in, got stopped on downs late. Then the stupid Aiden Childs right before the half. There's 15 seconds left. He gets strip sacked, fumbled. Michigan kicks a field goal right before the end of the half. Michigan State, forget covering. They could have won that game.
I know they should have won that game, really. It was a spot where I looked at it, I didn't bet it, and I could have got a way better number than it came all the way down. I was because you're getting the top of the market on Michigan State and the bottom of the market on Michigan, and that came true, but I don't think it should have became true. It was one of those thought situations. We already talked about North Carolina. We kind of like them. UCLA, Nebraska minus 6.5, total 39.5. Brad, I looked at this. It looks like a pretty rainy day out in Nebraska there. UCLA coming off the bye, and I think that the rain and the coming off the bye kind of sent this to 6.5. I think the look ahead was 7.5 or 7. And then, it's down 6.5, and it makes me interested in Nebraska a little bit just because I think they should be able to run all over UCLA, especially with the rain. But it's also a spot after the bye. I think Nebraska's in a good spot because they played those 2 tough teams in Indiana, got embarrassed, and they really hung with Ohio State last week. What are your thoughts on this
one? Run a key number. I think it's everything. I'm part of the UCLA money, but it was above a touchdown. I couldn't bet it now. So I'm not going to say, dude, can't bet Nebraska at 6.5. I understand. UCLA, played tough. Sacramento's got them with the toughest strength of schedule in the country.
I saw
They
that.
covered a lot of those games. The offense finally showed something against Rutgers in their last game off a bye. I don't mind them. I'm worried, like Nebraska, how much they gave it all last week, and that was impressive. You could say that was their most impressive game in the 2 years under Matt Rule. Can you do it again? So many of these teams. Where's the consistency? I watch you get absolutely. I mean, that was the worst performance of the Matt Rule era the week before. Then your best. What is it? I don't know.
I don't know either, but Virginia Tech Syracuse total is 53.5. I was kind of looking towards the over in this one. Syracuse a home dog at +4, but that defense is bad. But I think McCord can still sling it around a little bit. I mean, anything in this one?
I don't disagree with the over. Great thing about the Dome is you never worry about weather in the Dome. I think it's kind of an inside-out handicap, old classic. Virginia Tech, go look at the box score last week. They shouldn't have covered that game against Georgia Tech. They got outgained significantly. Georgia Tech had like a stopped on downs like 3 times inside scoring opportunities against Virginia Tech. That was with a backup quarterback. And then Syracuse, very misleading. -5 in turnovers. McCord, I think, bounces back after throwing 3 pick sixes. Syracuse for me.
Yeah, Syracuse plus the 4. Yeah, that was just an ugly turnover game for Syracuse last week for sure, and got way out of hand early. That thing was over pretty early, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Can Duke cover against Miami? +20.5. 54.5 total.
Let's wait and see if we can get a better number. I can
Okay.
tell you, if you want to bet Duke, I think you might get a better number. Manny Diaz going back to where he shouldn't have been fired, in my opinion. But I will say this. I think Duke's overrated. Haven't played anybody. I think Miami's overrated too. So I didn't play anything here. But I will say this. Try to get a better number if you're betting Duke than 20.5, because I think there's better numbers already out there. I think you might even get a way better number at like 21.5 when it's all said and done.
Absolutely. I'm too shy to say that I did not wear this Navy outfit because of the Navy game, so sorry about that. I will say that Rice, their defense shows pretty well. They're number 12 in defensive success rate, 42nd in defensive PPA. Now they're better against the pass, ranking 4th in success rate, 36 in passing success rate on defense. Navy, I mean, they fumbled the game away last week against Notre Dame, and it's spun. Don't get me wrong; they should have covered anyway. That was a better spot and just a way better team in Notre Dame because they're better talent, But Navy doesn't have the greatest defense either. I would say, if I was looking at this, I think the overs at 50.5. Navy's a slow tempo. That's probably right. I think the total's probably right. And they're just kind of trying to tease you to take the over there at 50.5 to 51 is what the market's teasing you as. I never say the sports books because it's not sports books, it's the freaking market. That's what I try to tell people. What about this one, Brad? -11, maybe on the road.
Too tough for me. Rice interim coach fired Mike Bloomgren. Quarterback, is Warner going to play or not? He didn't play last week against Connecticut, so that'd be a worry there. He is worth, in my opinion, a few points to the point spread, considering how bad their offense was a week ago. They had a kick return was the only thing they can manage last week against Connecticut. Horvath, keep an eye on him. His thumb was bothering him against Notre Dame. I mean, he was having trouble gripping the football like the rest of the team was. They really were pressing that game. You could see it. They were just the coach said that they were playing out of their, beyond themselves. It's just the moment was too big for them. I didn't bet it. I know they're telling you to bet over, but I'll tell you that Navy games are 7-0 to the over by 16 points a game. They told me to bet the over last week. I did, and I didn't have to sweat at all on that one. It was almost over at halftime against Notre Dame.
Right. Well, they're finally coming off a loss. And we talked quick TCU Baylor. You better be quick to the gun if you see a 2.5 pop. I might just play the money line on Baylor anyway. It's just one of those. It's hard to trust
Baylor's
Baylor.
The right side this week.
All right. Don't hurt Brad's bankroll now. Wisconsin, Iowa -3, total 40.5. I think this is perfect. I think the spread's perfect. I think the number's perfect. I think it's total perfect. I see a lot of problems with my Badgers still. When they step up in competition, they seem to get beat. Iowa's a tough place to play. I think it's a good number. Yet I Wisconsin has upside. It doesn't show all the time. Brad?
Lean Iowa. I think Sullivan's an upgrade over McNamara because he can run around. McNamara wasn't throwing it that well. I know Sullivan can't throw, but I think that's a sneaky upgrade. Kinnick at night, very tough. What am I getting from Wisconsin? It might have been fool's gold against 3 bad teams there. I didn't like how they finished last week. I didn't like that.
It was terrible coaching way to finish. And
yeah,
Braden,
that was an opportunity right there. That you're in the second year. That is an opportunity that was right there on your plate. Let's, a program changing type of win. They said, no, we don't want it. We don't want it. You can take it back, Penn State.
It was certainly where it wasn't Locktober for Braden Locke in that game, and Locke to lose maybe. He faltered at the end. They did drive down a couple times, threw some picks. Just he's still very green, and he should be. He's been in the program a few years. It's time to. I don't like Van Dyke. I mean, he's a future Wisconsin. I think they need to move on from both of them, and maybe Phil Longo. Phil Longo's driving me nuts a little bit too. He's bringing Fickle down right with him too. USC Washington plus 2.5, total 55.5. The plus 2.5 is really tempting me, Brad. It's like telling me that Washington's the right side. Although my power ratings actually have USC, I think by about 3.
You see it. They're battling the market. Anytime it goes to 3, it's happened multiple times this week already. It's been bought up immediately by Washington. That would be my preference. I'd wait for a 3 to take the Huskies. I don't trust either team, though. Washington statistically looks great, but they don't do the little things. It's stupid turnovers, stupid penalties. They got an idiotic field goal kicker that can't make anything, even though he made everything last year. I lean Washington, but if I could trust them more, it'd be best bet material at plus 3.
That's right. I agree. I need to trust them a little bit more. But they're a buy-on team for me still. You know what won the game for Indiana was their defense last week. I watched a lot of that game, being the best. So I just thought it was their defense more than anything. But Washington is a buy-on team for me, no matter what. Eastern Michigan plus 8.5 now. We have a question. Josh, Eastern Michigan at home, you can't give those guys 7.5 points. Are you nuts? First of all, if you want someone to go against Toledo, you're talking to the right person as a Bowling Green person like Brad. So why don't you give him all the backing that he's asking for?
I haven't got there this week, but I'll be rooting for Eastern. I need Eastern Michigan to win outright. So that would ensure a Toledo cashed under win total ticket. Man, Eastern Michigan, dive into their stats. I mean, second year in a row. I don't know how they're winning games. I mean, they're a bottom 10 team statistically. Yards per play margin. Got upset last week, deservedly. The one thing I don't like is Toledo's off a loss. If they were to have beaten BG last week, I would really love the spot for Eastern Michigan here, but I don't know. I just passed.
Yeah, I'm trying to find my
I'm at 7. That should scream bet Eastern Michigan getting that all-important hook, or even more than that at some books. But
how much do you give?
I'll be honest with you, I'm a MAC guy. I have not had good luck. I don't have a good read on the MAC this year. I don't.
How much do you give Eastern Michigan for home field in the MAC? 2 points? 2.5?
Yeah, if that. I know it's the weird, quirky gray field and all that, but no one is there. There's 500 people there. It's just a quick. I'm from the area, so it's literally a 45-minute drive up to Ypsilanti from Toledo. So it's nothing.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, let's just quick into Friday before we go. Anything there? You got Georgia State, UConn 7.5. You got South Florida, Florida Atlantic plus 2, Florida Atlantic home dog plus 2, and you have San Diego State at Boise State. Boise State's minus 23. Man.
Lean Georgia State. I know it's a bad spot. 3rd straight road game. Connecticut 6 straight at home, and they haven't played a road game in 2 months. But I got to play numbers. I like Georgia State there. And then the other one, over in the Boise State game, I think you want to get Genty back going. So I think they get him extra carries. And San Diego State's offense is showing some signs under Sean Lewis. Nobody watched it, but they almost beat Washington State last week. That would have been a big time upset.
Yeah, that's very true. I agree with that. let's move on to beer bet bangers. And this is any plus money bet you want to make. Could be one of the money lines you talked about today, Brad. I don't know if do you have one yet?
Well, I like South Carolina outright, so there's some plus money there. That'd probably
Okay.
be my favorite one of the week. Not a big one. I know everyone wants to bet a little to win a lot, but
That's why it's
I'll
beer
take
bet
it.
bangers, not half unit bangers.
Yeah, they're there. Give me a second. I'll get one. I do not
Okay,
have
I'll
one.
go. I'll go. I'll go. I'm gonna go with something I need to happen anyway. I need Duke to upset Miami. Look, man. Last year I watched Cam Ward and he was awesome and he's on a much better team now. But there's that midseason low where he kind of you gotta try. I mean, you think about Miami, they should have lost to Virginia Tech. They should have lost to
Yeah.
Cal. This defense is not good. And if you can give Duke one thing, that freaking 2 point, they went for 2 at the end of that game last week, Brad. I was watching it outside my buddy, and they didn't get it. But you know what? I think that SMU game, I think that gave them a lot of confidence, man. And you know what? It's a beer bet. You're getting plus 800, plus 900 in some books. I know we discussed we want to wait for a better number on Duke, but you're not getting it for a reason. I'm going to go with Duke. I'm going to go with Duke, see if they can pull me an upset this week.
I'll take Michigan State outright over Indiana. Not huge, but
Okay.
plus 250. And I think a lot of people would be surprised if that happened. I like Michigan State.
Well, I don't want to hear that, Brad, but I understand. I need them to go far, but we'll see what happens with Indiana. But it's kind of like
the problem with Indiana, they got to play the Buckeyes. And here's the thing: it's a TV show. 11-1 Indiana slam dunk to get in. Probably not. That sucks.
That does, yeah. That would not be a slam dunk the way the season's going to.
No.
You know, so one of those where I'll be thinking about hedging opportunities coming up here. But no, it's I understand it, and I like John Smith a ton. I think that was a massive upgraded coach that they got this year, and maybe this is the week to be on Sparty at least for a first half play. So I totally agree with that. But I also agree with is you guys following Brad Powers because he is one of my favorite cappers out there. He's the best spoken, and he's always got the numbers and the stuff in his head. Brad does not have to prepare for these things. He's the most ready person because he knows college football. Brad, where could our listeners and viewers get your great information, please?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter X, BradPowers7. If you like what you see, head on over to the website, BradPowersports.com.
All right, Brad. Hey, best of luck in your plays this weekend, man. I'm sure that the books will have a very scary experience.
Take care. Thanks for having me.